Money. Never far from our thoughts. So why is it when someone talks about finances, we get heavy eyelids, fall asleep, and dream of what we'd do if we were rich? In this podcast series, Kent Tilley does his best to make us yawn with laughter as he delves into gut-busting topics like debt consolidation, asset management, taxation, and budgeting. Still awake? Good. No matter your income level, you will certainly learn something from this series. However, the focus is on underserved low and middle income Canadians who struggle with monthly cash flow and can't get quality advice because they can't afford to access it. In each episode, Kent interviews experts who specialize in helping people get back on their financial feet and get on track. He'll break it down step by step and demystify the process of taking control of your money. If Kent can figure it out, it can't be that hard. Trust me, I've seen him try and fold a fitted sheet.
Got it.
I was, well, welcome back to another episode of the Kids in the Will podcast. I'm Kent Tilley. Today we have another great guest. I'm really excited to talk to him. Just met him. Mike Carlson's a financial planner out of Toronto. He's trying to do good things and help change the space, just like sort of my mission has been. However, he has a primary focus on helping Indigenous people and communities with their finances. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation today, talking about a lot of the problems that he sees, some of the potential solutions available to folks in those situations. And hopefully we can solve the world today. You know, we can solve the problems.
I think that's what you can name this episode. Mike and Kent saving the world.
Perfect. So I thought I would start, just let you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your career, your mission. You got awesome. 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
Right.
Okay. Go. My name is Mike Carlson. I live in Toronto, born and raised in Winnipeg, lived out in Vancouver for a while. I do a lot of things, generalist by trade, got into the sciences, taught math for a while, and then that kind of showed me that the financial system's super messed up. A lot of my Indigenous colleagues at the time were having a really extra hard time, and I just really wanted to do something about it and push back on the system. Got some qualifications. I'm a QAFP right now, Qualified Associate Financial Planner, passed my CFP exams, and I'm just kind of starting out this business to try to help folks with a specific focus on Indigenous communities. It's also really important that I contextualize myself a little bit. So on my dad's side, I'm mixed-Indigenous from southern British Columbia. Our last ancestral connections were to the Osuyas band in southern British Columbia. And so, yeah, I was working around a community out in Toronto, and that's kind of what motivated it. And Kent, I'm super happy to be connecting with you. It seems like we're on the same page with this whole, things are messed up. Let's do something about it.
Exactly. And I mean, so I always love talking to people, like-minded people in the industry. You don't meet a whole lot of financial planners that are like, let's really focus on the low income side, right?
Yeah. Because you know where the money is, right, in the low income section.
Right. But I was also talking to my team the other day, and I said, look, I know what everybody else is doing out there, and it's high level planning for, these sort of whales of potential clients, but the majority of the Canadian population isn't that person, and they need help. And I have a little bit of experience in sort of the low end realm, but not a ton. So I'm really interested, once we get into it, to learn some of the strategies that you use to help, some of the biggest issues that you see, but I guess let's talk about, so you were a teacher, then you got into teaching some college courses. You saw the financial difficulty that your community that you have ties to was feeling, and you're just like, you got mad.
Yeah, it was a sequence of things, right? It was like over the years, people kind of approaching me and saying like, Mike, can you come over here? I got this really intense thing that happened financially. Like, you're good with math, right? Like, can you help me? And I'd be like, I guess, what is it? And they'd say like, I have to declare bankruptcy. And I'd be like, I don't even know how to do that. So
Right.
let me Google this and see if
Mm-hmm.
I can just support you in this really intense thing. And what I was noticing as I would continue to do that is it's so emotional. Like, money is emotional, period.
Mm-hmm.
And that also seemed to be completely lacking from all dialogue, which kind of blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like this X factor that is talked about in this really inconvenient way. Like, Ken, I don't know if you ever heard like people talk about, planners are like, don't sell your investments when the market goes up and down. And if you do, that's the advice, right? Just like hold, don't panic, sell. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
much that's the number one thing you don't do.
Mm-hmm.
And then but it's framed in this like, this is inconvenient, not like the emotion comes first and we should talk out your emotions around this turbulent market and around all these things, and then the planning comes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the, I think the reverse order that actually is the most problematic in all of this. That, like, if I had to put my finger on like one thing, other than like years of systemic issues, it would be people's emotional state coming after, as an afterthought.
Right.
And so I was hearing that consistently with friends, community members, and my colleagues. And I was actually finally one of my colleagues who was in creditor debt to one of the money marts, which I hate, and I think we'll probably come back to this and just like
For sure.
rail on cash money, money mart, whatever. And this human was in debt to 9 different money marts and was pulling money from one to immediately pay off another one, to then take out an immediate loan and pull off and like pay another one.
Mm-hmm.
And so over time, they were in the hole 30 grand over 6 months, having only taken out like $500 to start or whatever, something insane. And their interest payments were like over 2,000 a month, like 2,500, 2,000, like $800 a month. And the stress of, on this one day, they'd have to take off work to go to the physical places and do this thing, and then drive to the next place and like do that. And it was just like, I can't even imagine that feeling of like having to take off work to go do this incredibly stressful thing that's like giving you ulcers, to then, because you're in this debt spiral. So that was actually the thing that I tried to help out with and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, fuck this whole place. Like,
Right.
I'm going to get my like credentials, because I need to have something to like get me in the room with these people that are not doing anything here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, so can we talk money marts for a sec?
Of course.
Of course, please.
Well, I mean, and you have way more experience with them than I do. So I other than me agreeing with you completely in when we were chatting before, yes,
Sure.
They are the devil. I mean, my definition of the devil is credit card companies, because
Sure.
I've seen the same thing where, I can't go to the bank to get a $30,000 loan with a good income, but I could go and apply for 18 credit cards worth $90,000 at triple the interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
And how would I ever pay it off?
It's absolutely insane. And then it's a gamble. Like, it's gotta be like, I'd love to see their books and the logic. Like, it's literally like Satan's laundry list or something. Like waking up, like, oh, how many people declared bankruptcy because of my actions today? Oh, like 1,030. Like, that's up from yesterday.
Right.
Like, how many people's families are suffering as a result of my actions? Oh, like thousands and thousands. Mm-hmm. Like, like it's absolutely wild. So I think your experience with the credit cards, as that being the evil, there's another layer of evil, like for folks that are even more marginalized, and it is
Right.
like the credit, like the and stuff, the cash monies, whatever fancy title they have to make you think that.
Yeah, there's a new one in town that's got really nice signs that makes it look like a bank.
Sure. Yep.
And I was like, "What's that?" And then I was like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah.
And I heard a story years ago about a family or somebody kind of knew, and they're like, "Yeah, his family, they're loaded. They own like a whole bunch of," and I'm like, "Who cares? They're terrible human beings." Like,
right. Like I really try not to judge, but then that it's just so damn hard to not judge everything associated with that. Like maybe they offer jobs to people or something, like but it's just there's no way that I can justify it at all. And so I work with clients who that is the go-to, right? So the banks have turned them down and the credit cards companies have turned them down. So now where do they turn after that?
Right.
And so it is, but it's also predatory lenders that are private. And we're not quite talking like the mob, but like starting to get into that. And I've had people, like clients or like folks that I've helped in general and have come across, and they've been like, won't give me any more money. Should I go to this like lending shark? And I was like, what? Wait, what? Like, how is that even a thing? Like, how do they get paid back? Are they going to break your knees? Like, but this is the level of desperation.
Sure.
And it is completely predatory, right? That someone would be in such a space that they need access to cash, that they would start putting themselves at physical risk, like not even bankruptcy risk,
right?
Which is like a cakewalk compared to this other stuff.
Totally.
I don't know the full story around bankruptcy, but I know enough that I think it should actually be leveraged as a tool of the poor more.
I agree.
I think there's this like upper class like financial institution thing going on where they're like, no, pay us back all the money that we lent you, when in reality bankruptcy, like 7 years and you're clear and you can't get a credit card. But like there's so many people that I know that have either declared bankruptcy or gone through credit consolidation, and they can still get like a Coho like credit card or something. Like there are now enough programs and enough services that are offered so that you're not completely like up shit creek if you declare bankruptcy. And I think actually that would be a really powerful way to push back for like as a collective, people that are highly in debt to threaten bankruptcy even more.
Right.
And unfortunately,
because it seems like such a terrible idea, but I mean, I've only in my life talked one person through a bankruptcy, friend of mine.
Yep.
Bad real estate investment, was in the hole, was basically never going to pay it back. It was over. And I ran it for him and I said, legitimately, even if you work your ass off for this, it's going to take you a decade till you could own another home again. And you're in a terrible position still. Or you can say, well, I did it, and 7 years later you work. And he's like, it's the best thing I ever did. And thank you so much for telling me that it was okay to do it.
And I don't know who would come after me if I was like started to champion this. Like, let's say Ken, you and I are like championing bankruptcy as a tool of the poor. I feel like some assassin or something is going to come like take us out.
Of course.
There's not a lot of things that I'd be worried about, but I feel like I'd be worried about that.
I know I used to, in the beginning, I was like, there's so many things I want to say, but I'm kind of scared because I'm like, they do have a lot of money and power. So it's like, Sure. But I do agree. I mean, and if you're finding yourself in that hole, a guest I had on earlier was talking about like literally, the difference of fixing a money, and he talked about money marts as big problems as well. Helping them understand doing this will save $28 a month. And you're like, $28 a month, like that doesn't do anything for anybody, but for a poor person, it's huge. To have a different like cash flow of $20 to $30 a month. And I would love to see those go out of business, right? I would love to never see a money mart on a street again, or a pawn shop or whatever, because in the more you see, the more you know that people are struggling.
Yeah, and their target, they move into neighborhoods. Like you said, there's like a sales plan to this. Like, what's our demographic? And it's who needs money now. And, there's all these other things. And in most cases, folks are doing it for good reasons. In the case of some people that I know, they get into this debt spiral because they're just trying to do something for family. And that's another piece that's really hard to reconcile. But there are these groups of people in Canada who just haven't bought into the financial system, and there are people who are kind of being held hostage by this entire thing around them, and they're like, I never signed up for that. And actually, then when you prioritize family over money, that's the issue, right? Like it's like we all signed a social contract saying everyone's going to prioritize money over family. At the end of the day, right? Like you can give all your money, but are you going to go into debt? Are you going to go and talk to like a lending shark to get that money to then support family? Are you going to that degree? Are you prioritizing family that far over top of money? And that's just not okay. We've like said as a society, which is kind of wild. And I also think, I don't want to get into like too much theoretical stuff, but to me, like UBI, like universal basic income, like just make sure everybody has some cash at the end of the day, is actually one of these solutions to folks that are trying to opt out of the system. For me, I kind of frame it as like it's like capitalism's penance. Capitalism creates this like spectrum of people. If you have a disability in this capitalist society, and it influences your ability to work or to participate in business or that sort of thing, like you're in rough shape. Like, you're making ODSP, unless you have family connections.
$1,400 a month, basically.
Yeah. Right? Like that is unquestionably below the poverty line. Now, can you access things? Or now, you've started to go into debt as well because you got an extra bank charge because your check didn't come in on time. Like that story happens all the time. Like people start to get into this panic debt spiral because something in the system didn't work out. The check was like a week late. Now they've got the bank fee overdraw. Now there's interest on that. That's building up. Now they can't afford food. And now they're trying to like go to Money Mart or whatever to pay this stuff off.
Right.
Those are the spirals. And I think, I don't know. I don't know what else to do besides just take care of the most vulnerable folks who either can't or won't, or never chose to in the first place. Like Indigenous people just had all this stuff imposed on them. And lots of them are like, I don't want anything to do with this system. I'm good. Just like leave me alone.
Right. Sure. And I mean, and I think a lot of people sort of don't think about that. I mean, I come from a fairly well-off neighborhood. You know, we were fine. Most people I know are in good financial shape.
Yeah.
And I think it gets forgotten. Like a lot of us have this safety net of, you know, parents or somebody that if we're like, I'm in trouble. I, you know, made a mistake and I owe 10 grand.
Yeah.
Like, can you help me out of it? I'll pay you back, gift, whatever it is. And if you don't have that safety net, you know, and you make that mistake, because money's hard, life is so very expensive. And I try to, you know, say that a lot, is like, listen, I know that this is difficult. And there's a lot like of stuff in your ear. There's so many things going on and all of this stuff. But there's very simple math to normal money management and how all of the banks work and how all of the fees add up and how to save your money. But if you get in that debt spiral, it's over.
Yeah.
So you're right. So what's your first step coming down? How do people get in contact with you, for one? How do you find people? Most people that don't have money don't want to talk about money, as I've found. A little bit of a sort of a shame or something like that, which I never want anybody to feel. You know,
I think so. There's this idea that it's called like being trauma informed, and essentially at the end of the day, it kind of means approach people in a way that is kind enough, gentle enough, in relationship enough, trusting, respectful enough, that if that person carries trauma, so if something really intense has happened to them around whatever you're bringing, that things are going to be okay. And so when you really start to think that out, right, like it can get into the weeds. So, you know, because you never know where people have come from, but around money specifically, making sure that you don't assume absolutely anything about their reality. Because the second you start to do that, it starts to put them back in this place that is, oh, I'm poor, and or I'm actually starting to go into like a traumatic spiral in the worst case scenarios. And everything about banks is designed to reflect that people who are poor can't be there, or it's like this classy establishment, or the way people are dressed, or the way that they're approaching people, or that you have to have your stuff in order, or that you have accounts to begin with, that you have savings. Like these are all kinds of assumptions that the second you start to invoke in the first kind of conversation, that you set people off, and now they're disconnected, and now they're not actually building trust with you. They're thinking about their, you know, what happened to their grandparent, or whatever it might be. That was this really intense thing. So I think going back to that thing that I was saying earlier, right? Like prioritize emotions over the technical. So you're saying like, what's the first step here? Like, what do we do? Meet people in relationship, in respectful, equal, and I would say trauma-informed ways. So it's not assuming anything. It's I'm here to support, and I'm here to be here for you in whatever you need. And I think people that work in finance are like, okay, well, but I got to do the finances. Not in this model. Not if emotions come first, and then we are first and foremost building relationship, listening to people, making sure that we really understand, checking our assumptions. Hey, I heard that you said this thing. Is this what I mean? Like, can I assume this? Those kinds of respectful comments, and not jumping to, okay, well, let's start budgeting.
Right.
When you just throw a budget at someone, and then on there, one of my colleagues. So I am trying to help connect Indigenous folks working in finance, and it's this thing that we're calling like the Indigenous Finance Network, and we're trying to build this, and it's kind of organically connecting with people. Anyways, one of my favorite humans in this group, she always says that she was being told how to budget, and one of the budget items, what like in this theoretical budget, was like plants, and the cost was like $300.
Mhm.
And she was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, you're spending $300 on plants? Like, at the time, that's like almost my entire monthly budget. Like, how the disconnect with that, and that's a silly example, but it's immediately disempowering. It blows up any sense of trust,
Mhm.
and I think doesn't start with where are you at. Let's build from there. What are your priorities?
Right.
Also, and then knowing that here are some options you might be interested in. So it's got to start with relationship, from what I know and understand,
Mhm.
and the assumption that people could be carrying trauma and probably are,
Right.
who are coming from a poor situation or low income situation.
Yeah, in most cases, I would have to assume that's correct, right? And I mean, I've always the biggest part of this job is the psychology of it,
Mhm.
right? Where you know a robot could do the math and say this is the
Sure.
perfect financial plan for you.
Well, and can I just to jump in on that? I don't know if you're hearing all this stuff in finance where people are like, the robots are coming to replace us. And like there's all these whispers, and it looks like a whole bunch of different things. It's like reach out to new millennials, like
Mhm.
robo-visors, the secret truth or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
but it's appealing to this like you're being phased out by
Mhm.
robots. And to me, I'm just like, wait, like robots can't replace yet the emotional side, the listening side, this like first the human relationship side.
Mhm.
And I think there's the industry's panicking because they know deep down inside that the math can be done by robots. So I appreciate that you said that.
Yeah, oh, of course, but and it's what I don't want to get into this too much, but like say Reddit Personal Finance Canada, what I
Mhm.
see, and I can't read it anymore, but is basically somebody will give a situation, and then the answer that gets the upvotes will be the robot created
Mhm.
exact thing that this person should do. Uh, and I always say, yes, if you are 100% logical about money,
Yes.
then that's great.
Mhm.
But human beings are not logical about money.
Yeah. They're emotional.
And our decisions aren't made based on logic. Because if I give somebody advice, it's like, this is the logical answer. It does not mean they take it. And I know that because I've written hundreds of financial plans and talked to hundreds of people about completely different situations over my life to say that no one human being is the same.
Mhm.
And everybody's going to take a different route based on their relationship with money. So it's
Mhm.
interesting to talk about that, and just on a totally different level where everybody's got a weird relationship with money regardless of their situation.
Yep.
um, uh, and most of them are shitty
Sure.
even
Yeah.
if they have money.
Well, yeah, like, and I was thinking about this earlier, like, mo money, mo problems, 100%. Like, some of the folks with the most issues and the most emotional issues have the most money.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I thought we came to a close chance of clarity for about a month and a half when COVID started, when everything slowed down, and we're all like, we don't need as much stuff. We're actually okay. A lot of people are like, I can live on $2,000 a month. If we weren't renovating our house, our budget, we would have been saving a fortune because we were
yep.
still employed and loving life. and everybody, and my life was kind of like that already, working from home, doing my own thing with my own business, whatever. And I was like, everybody's going to see that it's better.
Yep.
And then we just went back to the same old garbage.
Yeah.
And now it's getting worse and more unaffordable and harder for people. And one of the things that I like to talk about is potential solutions. Sure. And so I love the idea of you, and we talked about this briefly with your Indigenous planners and finding a way to promote education and sort of a business model for young high school students in these communities to say, let's learn about money, let's implement this, and you become the specialist. 1, 2, or 3 people can start a little firm in their own community to say, we're doing this, like, because that's where, and business will thrive because people have better money options.
Yeah. It's got to be local, right? Like every marginalized group has to see themselves in the system. They have to have folks who understand them in a specific context, in a localized context, and they have the relationships to back it up. They get that there's the empathy in whatever the particular issue is, or whatever the community is. And I would even say, like more so in Indigenous communities, whether it's on reserve, off reserve, or wherever it is, it has to be folks that have local connections. And so right now, again, we're chatting with folks that are, everything from like working in banking to doing frontline education. But the dream is to actually lobby for the creation of these opportunities locally for people to educate their own people, have them come back and support their own communities and their wealth generation. I've heard some people say that this is like there is a growing Indigenous middle and upper class right now, and it's on this precipice, and it's just going to take some of these probably younger people going off to school, coming back to help folks get on the right track, to start saving money, to start building wealth, to start talking about intergenerational wealth, rather than talking about intergenerational trauma.
Right.
So, it's got to happen locally, and that's what we're hoping to do and lobby for, whatever that particular program looks like.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, anything I can do to help, want to chat about it or talk about it or anything, because I love the idea of localized help. Because the biggest issue is so a question, you do fee for service planning for low income individuals in specifically, how hard is it to get paid from somebody that has very little amount of money? How do you make a go of a business doing that?
Right. Yeah, let's talk business, because I have been thinking about this a lot. And my first iteration was, and I still think it's a reasonable start, was pay me $500. It's got to be upfront, and I'm going to spend 8 hours with you over the year. Because I was really sitting and thinking about what do people need most? Well, they probably need a check-in once a month, give or take. And so that check-in could be between half an hour and an hour. And over time, one of my favorite expressions is people always overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10.
Just read that yesterday. That's a good one. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it before, but it just came up on a thing yesterday.
Sure. Yeah. I love it. Because there's something about like long-term planning. And I think to dig yourself out, the deeper you are in it, in the pile, the longer it takes you to dig yourself out. And so this idea of like, here's the budget or here's the magic, right? Like And I think we're used to that as planners as well, being like, boom, I got a solution, done. What's next? Rather than, honestly, this is going to take you 10 years to like really build a healthier relationship with money, to get out of the debt, to get out of the spending habits, all this kind of thing. So I'm on board with you for 10 years. And I look forward to like seeing you every month. We're going to build that relationship. You know, you're going to have some good months, some bad months, and overall we're steering the ship slowly. So I also felt with the 500, again, we're looking at a rate, that's in the like just less than 100 an hour. But then you start doing the math, and you can make 100 grand off of give or take. It's 50 grand off of 100 clients in this model, and you're really only working like 1 or 2 days a week.
Right.
And so if you wanted to scale that up, even at that price point, again, you're working, there's a lot of time, but the expectation at that pay rate as well is not that you come in with the fancy plan and the presentations and stuff. It's very much like, I'm here. It's almost like counseling or like therapy. You don't expect your therapist to have done like a huge amount of work before you come in. You're like, you show up at the time. If you miss it, you're still charged. And I think those kinds of subtleties in this kind of business model allows and really makes it affordable. So if you're looking at someone who's in like a low tax bracket, and they're working a reasonable job, or they're part-time working, or whatever it might be, they're working gigs. If they are filing and if they've kind of done their savings okay, that tax return is actually going to give them the cash flow that could actually pay for this advice for the next year. So by actually doing the taxes together, now we're securing the cash to then pay me for the following year.
Right.
So then I was looking at it, and it kind of, my recent business model has evolved because I can't get around the idea that the difference between someone who makes $50,000 a year and 30 and 10 is night and day. Like it's a completely different situation. And so there's a lot more people who are talking about indexed fees. But in very few industries, you can actually check like what someone makes to make sure that they're paying the right amount.
Right.
But in our industry, you can, because that's literally what we're doing.
Right.
So I make it super clear, and I actually give an indexed hourly fee. And I've started to get more people, and also the people that I'm helping are starting to increase their income over time.
Then you can ask for more money later.
And it's kind of already programmed into the indexed funds as it goes up. So as you make more money, you pay me more money. And I kind of range from like $40 an hour at the absolute, like, that is working with elders or students, basically. Folks that are really on the margins and like need help now. All the way up to, I'll charge more than $200 an hour if I'm dealing with someone who, is the big whale, as you had said. But I'm not seeking those people out. I have a feeling that some of my clients will be that in the future, but not right now.
Right.
One thing in this is that there's still a huge demographic of people that we're missing, right?
Of course.
Like the folks that make, give or take, under 20, still can't afford that. Like they don't have the cash flow, even if there's a payment plan or whatever. I'm taking money from them that they just don't have.
Totally. And so it's like the worst catch-22 of all time.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I could help, but it's going to cost you. I'm not going to be able to help enough to cover what it costs for my time. And then and that's the ultimate problem, where, the only people that have the kind of money to do this are banks.
Sure.
Right. To have a specialist in each branch that is like, I'm going to help. And it's not about selling a product.
Yeah.
However, that's not the training anymore.
That's not going to happen for sure.
Well, no. I mean, it should.
It should. It should, unquestionably. The banks, again, is this like penance for capitalism, right? Like if you're going to make billions of dollars in profit, you should have free banking for people that make under a certain amount of money or whatever.
Of course, free advice, free everything, because your hope is that more people have more money later. But right now, currently, as it stands, the amount of money that they make off of debt products far exceeds what they make off of people having money.
Yes.
So that's why you're not going into a branch and saying, I've got $100,000 invested. They barely care about that. What they want to do is see what your line of credit is at, if you need refinancing on your mortgage to get more debt. And when everybody becomes a sale, and so it's so problematic. And I want to get back to your point, and I loved it about the 10-year time frame, because our business, and I was thinking about this a lot last night. I was going to do a video on it where I was like, your accountant helps you with money today, but they don't think about money like I do. I think about money 10, 20, 30 years from now. And it is slow and boring as hell, like my interviewing style. And that's the way that it should be. Unfortunately, everybody wants an immediate fix, and the immediate fixes are always going to put you in more trouble. HELOC to consolidate bad debt. If I'm not saying that's a terrible idea.
Right. There's a circumstance where it works.
If you do it once.
Yep.
Right. And you have a plan that is 10 years down the road that we're going to be in a way better position because we freed up cash flow, not because now we have more spending money and then now we're paying off this $10,000 debt for the next 25 years. Or whatever it is. Right. And so I love the idea of bringing together the Indigenous planners. That would be great. I think that makes so much sense. I've never really thought about it that much until you brought it up. But if you could get people interested in it, and obviously it only takes a few to really spread a message community wide, because they're in small, generally tight-knit communities, I would assume, and there's always thought leaders within them. So promoting it that way, I would love to help in that way. I'm just about to join a board that is focusing on children's education and financial planning, because the earlier it starts, the better we have an understanding of what's going on, the better it's going to be in the future, because it's not great out there for a lot of people, and I can't imagine it's going to get any better. So I'll ask you a quick fun question.
Sure.
How easy is it to get a new client into a house in Toronto?
Into a house?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. So this is, again, I'm always looking for creative ways to disrupt. And I think people actually co-buying properties, and not a roommate situation, but actually combining incomes is really what I'm seeing as the ability to get into property ownership right now. Because as an individual, it's actually impossible.
Sure.
So what are then the creative ways, that we can find that aren't like move out of town and work exclusively online, or I don't know, have rich parents,
it's a good one. It's helped.
Trade your parents in for some rich parents. That definitely helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, most folks who are trying to get in, if you're not already in the market, you got to start being creative, and you got to look at ways to even the folks that are higher income earners that I work with, who again don't have this down payment saved, are looking at 10-year timelines to save up the down payment to even put down on something, and that amount is still increasing just behind the savings rate that you have. So I don't know what the future of housing is, but you know what? I'm hopeful about the economics situation. I'm not hopeful about the housing situation.
I'm not at all. I would either. People don't want to hear my opinion on it. I'm like, they're like, what do you think about this? I say, don't ask me, because I am short-term terrified, but I am long-term very optimistic, to be completely honest.
Sure.
If you ask me, I think, after the next historical downturn, whenever that may be, whatever comes out of that is always a shift forward with monetary policy, with society. Life gets better within each of those sort of 100-year bubbles.
Yep.
And I believe that thought leaders like yourselves, helpers like you, are the ones that can drive that change to, help make a system that's more equitable for more people. And that's the thing, is I love business. I love being an entrepreneur. I like stuff.
Sure.
I want a cabin and a boat.
Yeah.
But I don't want a yacht. I don't want a private jet. I don't want to work 100 hours a week. I want to spend time with my family. I want to be comfortable. And I think that should be attainable.
Yeah.
And it's no longer really attainable if you don't have a head start with, parents with a little bit of money or something else, right? And that's a problem.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's for me, it's climate change and the class divide. It's the rich people who own property. Basically, anyone who owns property is just making huge amounts of money, and anyone who doesn't is actually losing out comparatively.
Right.
And it's just that divide. And I think COVID, the way I think to understand that deeply is to look at the experiences of people in COVID. And there's kind of this top third that made money during COVID. There's this middle third that, like, we were parents and we had a hell of a time or whatever. We were just kind of holding on, like things were pretty stable. And then there's the folks that lost their housing, their industry was disrupted, and it's just aggravating the class divide even more. And I don't know what that's going to look like.
If anybody doesn't believe that to be true, it's very easy to see. There was money printed, and within a year and a half, all of it went back to the banks.
Yep.
In record profits, and billionaires that increased their wealth by trillions of dollars. And people above yourself and myself made a ton of money, depending on their business. Not everyone.
Yep.
Some were very hard hit, but and it was easy to see. It was the quickest transfer of wealth in history, as far as I know.
Yep.
To create that extra divide, which, we just need. There's so many more people in this area than there are on especially the high end, that just don't understand money, how taxes work, how it all sort of flows, all of these things. So it's like, well, if we educate the top end there that are sort of the influencers in communities to be like, basically, I told people, I'm like, the only reason I want to be rich and successful, so I have a seat in that room so I can say, this is messed up.
Yeah. You want to go to the weird party with like masks in like rural Italy with all those,
I would hate it.
Yeah,
but I
would hate it. But you get to say like, hey, do you want to open up this country? And they'll be like, oh, okay, fine.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I won't keep you any longer. I do have, I am going to the hockey game. Go Oilers.
Lovely. Go Oilers. Being from Winnipeg, that's hard for me to say, but I appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that.
No worries.
The absolute pleasure talking to you. I look forward to chatting with you again because I would love to. We should definitely keep in touch. And I'll let you know when it's out. We'll put any sort of links to your company. And if you want to reach out to him, I'm sure he'd be happy to take on more clients. And if you're a good fit for him, please do. And good luck with your business and your mission. And I'm there for you anytime you need anything.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Kent. Super nice to meet you. And hope you get a million clicks on this.
Me too. Wouldn't that be nice? We
awesome.
probably won't.
But we'll hope. We'll hope. Yeah.